Start. Let's go. Hey guys, we are live. Welcome, everyone. So just give me 1 second to make sure the stream is and we have an excellent connection. And yes, we're good to go. Guys, I'm here with the Crosstalk, Shamoon Khakan. Thanks for joining me again this evening, Shamoon.
Hi, Lloyd. Trusting that you are well and great
Ver-
to be back on your show, man.
yeah, very well. Thank you. Very well. Thank you. Yeah, this is going to be an interesting show, guys. Shamoon will lead. And sorry, how? The question was nearly there. Um, Edkin, not sure how you mean that. So yeah, we have Edkin. Thank you very much for being here. We have Melanie Savage. Hello, welcome. We have Zahar Medikev and Dodzor. We have yeah. So guys, welcome. Today we're going to be discussing Sheikh Asrar, who had a debate with Hatun Tash, and this is going to be very very entertaining. I did I provide the link to that? I'm not sure that I did, but I'll let Shamoon take the lead on this, and then I will provide commentary about the rather deceitful. I'll discuss about the rather deceitful polemics and apologetics provided by Sheikh Asrar, how he literally, echo, my bad. Again, I'm not wearing my headphones. Sorry, guys. Yeah, my forgetfulness. I'll be discussing that. So, and oh yes, so Edkin, you said how did YouTube alter your previous video? So guys, just so you know, as you know, some of you are experiencing stuttering and buffering on my videos. I especially upgraded my internet to the maximum that I could get here. And I also bought a brand new router so I could have the best possible internet. I have a very high speed system and it's a brand new state of the art Wi-Fi 6 router. Hi, Nicholas, welcome. So when I created the stream yesterday, I set it for 8 p.m. and I left the image blank. YouTube went and added a previous image and it changed the time to 10:05 p.m. So it seems that YouTube is causing the stream to buffer for some people and it's problematic. Shamoon, let's you take it. Anyway, so YouTube's messing with me. Shamoon, up to you. Over to you.
Okay. So as everyone knows who's joining us today, we'll be discussing and just providing a review on the debate that had taken place between Sheikh Asrar Rashid. He is a renowned scholar in Islamic scholar, and he stays in the UK. Now, before we go on, I had a special request for um, for you, Lloyd. Is I had an anonymous gentleman approach me, and he said that he had a bunch of questions that he wanted you to answer, and if you are interested in answering. So before I ask them, are you interested in answering?
No,
You're not.
because they're entirely off topic. These are mini polemics. This is just based on him attacking Christianity, and he's as opposed to dealing with the facts from the Sharia that we provided in the last show. He needs
Okay.
to actually, rather than saying, "Well, what about?" and discussing Christian doctrine, he needs to, first of all, for him to believe that Jesus is authentically Christian the way the Christians believe it is complete blasphemy. For him to believe that Christianity is valid is total blasphemy. But also, he needs to actually, this is just a way of deflecting off from the very, very uncomfortable information that is covered within the Islamic Sharia.
Okay.
Of course, we can
Okay.
invite
So
him on
if
and
yeah.
he's welcome. We'll give him copies of his own Sharia manuals and he can then show me from his own Sharia manuals how I am misreading or misinterpreting them. He can find the correct references, and if he doesn't like our Sharia manuals, he needs to tell us which ones are the correct ones to use within his school of fiqh, which are the major authoritative ones, because to my knowledge, these are. Does that answer that question sufficiently?
I guess so. I hope the gentleman is happy with it. But yeah, definitely. For all those who are watching, if there are any Muslims in the audience, feel free to come live on the show with us, and we will definitely be willing to have a respectful but a very objective and a direct conversation with you about all that you'd like to have a discussion about. Okay. So before we kind of start up, I wanted to ask your observation on the setup of the panel. Hey, Lloyd, uh, you've got on one side you've got the debate topic is Islam versus Christianity, the choice, right? You've on the one hand, you've got Sheikh Asrar Rashid.
Hmm.
According to the Muslim sources, this is a scholar of Islam, a teacher of Islamic studies, a student of fiqh, aqidah, and other contemporary issues, and one with ijaza, a key title for scholars, and at least in this day, he's allowed to interpret key issues within the Islamic context, and and so on the other hand, it's it was fascinating for me to see how Sheikh Asrar agreed to debate an evangelist, not necessarily a theologian, a scholar of Christian thought, but a street evangelist. What are your
Well,
thoughts on that?
so go back a few years, go back 6 or 7 to 10 years, and you'll find that sheikhs used to come on David Wood and Sam Shamoon's video broadcast. They would be in the studio, and
Yeah.
sheikhs would join them, and sheikhs would discuss Islam, and David would embarrass them. Notice that in the last 7 or 8 years, you have not seen any sheikhs discussing with Christian apologists who actually know the sources. When's the last time you've seen David Wood debate an actual sheikh? Never happens, ever. That has stopped happening. Now you have Dawa students who know roughly nothing come on and simply assert things very loudly and very forcefully. Sheikhs don't come on, so sheikhs don't want to be put on the spot, and they realize that they are at a disadvantage. So hence he had to deal with that. Notice the way that he structured his argument, guys. I put the link in the description. I forgot to do so. I just did it right now. I will drop it in here as well, so you can find a link to the debate. But it's worth watching to see how he makes assertions without backing up a lot of his evidence. So,
Yes, and
yep.
assertions about the Christian dogmas. Uh, well, we'll get into it, but I found the fact that the two Christian panelists were unable to necessarily provide an appropriate response because their field is not systematic theology. They're
I
more
will
street
say
evangelists.
that's,
Yeah,
yeah, no,
and
agreed. No,
yeah,
yeah,
good,
go on. Uh,
good.
Christian theologians, Christian academics, Christian apologists have failed. Look, when it comes to the Quran and the Hadith, as you know, they've been doing this for 1,400 years. They can run in circles whole day, every day. Islamic apologists will lie to you all day for free, right? And this is what they do. They've developed very careful arguments. However, when you go to the Sharia, this is black and white. The Sharia is the final interpretation. The Quran is not the final interpretation. The Hadith are not the final. And you'll notice that Sheikh Asrar carefully lies and presents very specious arguments. And Nix does not drink coffee. That is blasphemy, Nix. That is blasphemy. We need to pray for you that you are not drinking coffee. I, this is the good stuff. This is the
Okay.
good stuff. Moving on. Sorry about
So
that.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's okay. Um, I just wanted us to kind of quickly have a look at that, which we have done is just having just commenting on the fact that it does definitely seem like an unfair panel choice.
Well,
But moving on, doesn't
well,
matter.
one comment on
Moving.
that. Sheikh Asrar was not. You would think he was alone because his colleague was not technically involved in the debate. His
Yeah.
colleague was doing online research, and also his colleague was receiving information from outside sources. So he was in contact with another panel somewhere else who was providing him answers and providing him arguments to use. Nix is saying the buffering is really bad. I'm sorry, guys, but YouTube seems to be messing with me. My connection, when I look here at the status, is my machine is really powerful. I built it especially for this. My internet is as good as it can be. Everything is state of the art. I especially invested the money for that, and this is looking very good. Zero drop frames. My throughput is fantastic. So YouTube is just messing with me. I'm sorry about that. Anyway, thank you for that tip. I
Okay.
really am grateful. Thank you very much. So yeah, please go
Okay.
on, Shamun.
Yeah. So, anyways, I'd like to now that we've actually just made a quick comment on the fact that the unfair, panel setup choice. I wanted us to quickly look at a few very good points that Caleb Courneloup actually makes from time for those who are interested in actually just skipping, time frames and just jumping into it. If you notice from 18 minutes, 10 seconds, he actually starts talking about reasons not to become Muslim, right? And his first reason that he provides is that the Quran gets the Trinity wrong, and that this he provides a quick discussion from 18 minutes to 19 minutes, somewhere there. Did you want to comment there before I go on?
No, I'll let you continue, and we'll just take it point by point. Because
Okay.
I've made notes on the things that I would feel comfortable discussing. Yeah.
Okay, so in my in one of my videos previously that I actually have made, I actually titled it something to the effect that um, the Quran, the reason for one major misconception within the Muslim community, right? This is, and I must say that I say this humbly and I say this objectively, that the Quran seems to be a primary reason why Muslims are unable or somehow are intellectually blocked in understanding when the Christian actually says that the very premise of our understanding of the being of God is that we believe in one God. And they, for the life of a Muslim, cannot begin to grasp that because in Surah 5, verses 70 to 75, what you've got is firstly, the confession, a proclamation that the Quran makes that the entire being of God is Mary's son. That's what the Christian claim is. And I'm not sure which Christian claims that the entire being of God is found isolated in the person of Christ. I'm not sure what Christian believes that. Lloyd, have you ever come across a Christian theologian, any theological work of antiquity or whatever that actually makes such a claim that the entire being of God is found within the person of Christ alone? Have you ever come
Notice,
across
okay,
that?
so for instance, there's a heresy from the third and fourth centuries called modalism. This is
Yeah.
equivalent to making the argument that, for instance, God is water. Water is found in different states: ice, water, and steam. So you have one God and he appears in different states. So in other words, when he was not in heaven, he was on earth as Jesus. And then when he died, he went back to heaven. And then sometimes he's on earth as the Spirit, but then he's not in heaven. This is modalism, where there's simply one God and he simply just transfigures himself into another form. Notice that
Yeah.
Asrar did very clearly say, and in fact, let me just find that. So I wasn't planning to discuss that specifically now, but let me just have a look in my notes here. He mentions, oh, sorry, let me go there. He mentions that, for instance, we say that we have God who is one essence but three persons, right? There's certain terminology that we utilize. And he says he changed the
Yep.
word persons to qualities. He deliberately changed it to
Yes, yes.
qualities.
I actually wanted to talk about that later on as well, but very good
And he
observation.
brings up the idea of modalism. He actually speaks about it as modalism. He presents it as modalism. Now,
Yeah,
understand,
but
Islam is
yeah,
Gnostic. You go through the Sharia, it tells you that Islam is a Gnostic religion. They are Gnostic. And there are words within Islam for different Gnostic heresies, like Arianism, they've adopted. They've taken on, they even have Arabized words for Marcionism. So he is presenting a Gnostic argument, third and fourth century Gnostic heresies he's presenting as Christian. He even mentions a different Christian sect, a heretical sect, not a Christian sect. He presents that as an authentic Christian sect later in the discussion.
yeah. Okay. Yeah. So one thing is that to get clarity on this whole issue of modalism, etc., going back to, because the early church was definitely combating Sabellianism and all of these heresies, the heresies revolving
Mhm.
around the union of the different personhoods of God. Now, I'd like anyone to go and read the Nicene Creed. The reason for that would be is to understand that the Nicene Creed, couple centuries prior to the existence of Quran and the conception of the Quran comes through and clearly defines for us what the Trinity is, what the Christian church believes. And I must say this very clearly, that the Christian church entirely rejects modalism, rejects Sabellianism. We are not modalists. If there is a modalist, we reject him as a heretic. So please understand that unless the argument that the Quran is making is against modalists and then not against Trinitarians. Because if the argument is against Trinitarians, then the Quran definitely gets the doctrine of the Trinity. And might I suggest that Allah Himself gets the Trinity wrong, the supposedly all knowing being, right? So that is definitely a very, very troubling thing to kind of come across within the Islamic sources, which is the Quran. Another proclamation that Surah 5:72 to 75 makes is that God is in thirds. Once again, this is also an appeal to that God does not need partners. That's like a regular language within the Quran, and that's a regular language also that Muslims use for polemics against Christianity. That God does not need partners, and let me say this very clearly, and let me say this very boldly and very, as objectively as possible. I agree with you. God does not need, not only does he not need partners, that he does not have partners. The personhood of God is not to ascribe partnership to God. Understand that. It is it's so I've made so many multiple videos on such an issue. It kind of gets exhausting repeating myself at this stage. Any comments there, Lloyd?
Um, not really. I'm looking up something at the moment that would be useful to define this.
Okay.
Um,
Another thing I'd like us to kind of also look into the whole issue of the Quran gets the Trinity wrong. Surah 519. Now, this is a conversation supposedly that takes place between Allah, the Quranic God, and Isa, Jesus, right? And Allah is asking Jesus. Now, get this. Allah is asking Jesus, did you tell the people to worship you and your mother? Allah is asking this. Allah understands the Trinity to be a worship of the Son, the Mother, and the Father, which would then be Allah. That is shockingly false. I must say, and I say this once again humbly, and I say this with the purposes of being as objective as possible, is that there is nowhere within the Christian conception of the Trinity that Mary is a part of the Trinitarian structure within the personhood of God. That is, if any credit to me, please understand that I
yeah.
actually did one of my theses is on the Trinity, and I actually even looked at the historic development of the Trinity. The closest that the Roman Catholic Church has ever come to involving Mary is not so much to ascribe her deity, but is to elevate her higher than what she actually was, is to say that she is a mother of God, but not to kind of involve her within the Trinitarian structure. That never happened, not even
Well,
within the
there's
Roman
a
Catholic
few
Church.
distinctions that Muslims fail to make. One, when you speak of Jesus as God, you realize that on earth he had a human nature,
Yeah.
right? You also realize he had a divine nature. And so we make the distinction, they do not. And then also Muslims also call Aisha the mother of the Muslims. How is that not elevating
Well,
her? She's elevated as well.
well,
They also
in-
believe that Jibril came down, and Jibril is the Ruh al-Quds, the Holy Spirit. Of course, they also say that if you look at John 14, I think it is, where at the Pentecost the Holy Spirit came down to anoint the apostles, right? They claim
yeah.
that Holy Spirit that came down is Muhammad. So the Holy Spirit is both Jibril and Muhammad. and Jibril is then Muhammad, or Muhammad is Jibril, or I have no idea what's going on anymore. But of course, Jibril breathed into Mary, into her JJ, to give to conceive Jesus. So they do admit that she is divine, but of course, then they mix the entire theology, the Christian theology. They completely get that wrong. So there's that they admit to the well, they say the same story is there, but then they completely get the whole idea wrong. That Jibril did it. Yeah. So anyway, moving on. So onto your other
Yeah,
points.
and that's
Well, yeah,
and that's the thing, is that even within so immediate response that I'm kind of like assuming that I would get is, have you read any tafsirs on these verse? And yes, once again, a normal reading of Ibn Kathir will tell you that a normal understanding of the language of Ibn Kathir and the Quran verses seems to suggest the very thing that I actually said, that Allah seems to be wildly mistaken as to the nature of
well,
himself, God, right?
so the numerous
Because
references in the Sirah
yeah,
where Muhammad meets Gnostic Christians. I hate the term Gnostic Christians because they're not Christians. They're Gnostics. They're heretics. They are deniers
yeah,
of Christian faith, Christian doctrine. But for instance, in the Sirah, he meets a there's a monk called George, also known as Buhera. There's also he meets a monk called Nestor, and that name is very bluntly a description of the fact that it was an Nestorian priest. He was married to his first wife by a a Gnostic priest who was an Ebionite. So he was
hmm,
married to his first wife, Khadija, by an Ebionite priest. They call him a Christian, but he was not a Christian. So the first exposure that they had to Christian doctrine was Gnostic doctrines. That's why the Quran contains numerous references to stories found exclusively in Gnostic writings, like the clay birds that he brings to life. And Jesus is presented as quite a nasty person in those stories as well. And that would be found in the infancy gospel of Thomas as one example. Um, yeah. So can I mention a couple of things that you discussed? Yeah, guys, Lilith, we can discuss that another time. That's a pretty in-depth subject, very interesting subject, actually. Um, yeah. So where did the Muslims get the idea that Mary was part of the Trinity in the first place? Because
pardon, could you
Muhammad
please
was an
repeat that?
idiot. The question is, Villainous, where did Muslims get the idea that Mary was part of the Trinity in the first place? Was there a heretical movement that believed that? That's a good question.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, the struggle over there is that I think primarily their primary source of getting that information about the fact that Mary is a part of the Trinity is the Quran, right? Surah 5. You can start reading from verses 72 all the way to 119. You will get a good understanding as to what the Quran actually teaches the Trinity to be, right? Second of all, it seems like even if we have to suggest that mildly suggests that the Muhammad, the Islamic prophet, was somehow exposed to the Roman Catholic Church at that time. That his understanding, his and I must say, wildly misunderstood what and how the Roman Catholic Church actually viewed Mary as. They did seem to elevate her. I will grant that definitely, but nowhere within the Roman Catholic understanding or the creeds of theirs would they ever include Mary within the structure of the Trinity. That never happened, and
yeah.
that
So
definitely is my challenge to
Villainous
any
asks,
Muslim to actually
yes, but
agree.
they
Yeah.
copied into the Quran from somewhere. Yeah, who knows? That's a question I don't have an answer to right now. But yeah, they have lots of ideas.
Well,
Now, I will
they
mention,
suggest it's Allah, so you
yeah,
know.
well, clearly they have a misunderstanding of Christian doctrine. If you read Ibn Qayyim, Ibn Taymiyyah, they have a major misunderstanding. A couple of points I want to raise that were raising that were interesting. Muslims claim that the Quran is eternal and uncreated, right?
Oh, sorry,
Christians,
sorry about.
yeah,
I'd love where you're going. Do you mind if we finish up with uh, Caleb's argument? Because I just got to
sure.
the juicy part.
Okay, go ahead.
Is that okay? Because then I
Sure, yeah,
wanted to work through it systematically. Are you okay with that?
sure, yeah.
Okay. So I wanted to actually then the third reason that I wanted to jump reason number two for not being a Muslim. Reason number three was that Muhammad was not a good example to follow. That he was morally corrupt, and you can actually find this from 20 minutes onwards into the debate. A few things. Now, I was recently exposed to this idea how corrupt Muhammad actually was, not only within the Christians just randomly claiming that, but it's fascinating the idea of Lloyd, that whole idea that Muhammad actually lied, and there's an actual proclamation and kind of crediting him with the fact that he died because his aorta was cut. Could you please
Aorta,
speak to
that
that?
his aorta was cut.
Yeah,
Uh,
could you please speak to that? That's
okay,
a
fine. I have
fascinating.
to bring up some notes, then I need to bring up my notes. Um,
Please, that's I want to. I really want to impress that because that it definitely is a very juicy subject.
let me find this. So hold on. Um, okay, yeah, I was not expecting that question, so I need
Okay, so
to.
while you're looking, can I go through a few things that he
Sure.
said?
Yep.
Okay,
Please
so
go through that.
he talks about the fact that since even the Quran actually talks about the fact that Surah 33, verse 21 actually says that Muhammad is a good example for all to follow. So then what Caleb does is that he brings up the fact that Aisha, the marrying of the child bride, is definitely a pressing issue that he actually brings up, is that if he was a morally upright man, lusting after a little child um, is not a demonstration of a morally upright man. Definitely not. We will definitely will look for the Muslim in the audience. We will look at some of the Muslim sources and scholars on the issue as well. So let's hold up there. The other issue was Muhammad married his adopted son's wife, Zayd ibn Muhammad. Um, and this was a thing that one of the documents in the Hadith, Al-Tabri, volume 8, pages 2 and 3. Let me repeat that. Al-Tabri is a Islamic historian. Al-Tabri, volume 8, page 2 and 3, where you will find that Muhammad looked upon his adopted son's wife. She opens the door because I think he was visiting the son. Zaid, his son, is not at home. He opens the wife. She opens the door for Muhammad. Muhammad looks upon her and he gets aroused. He turns around and he starts praising Allah. Glory to Allah. Glory to Allah. Glory to Allah. And at that point, once again, lusting after another man's wife. Now, I think that you be the judge as to a morally upright man, does he demonstrate such characteristics? Well, I have other things, but I'm actually more interested in what Lloyd has actually pulled up on the screen. Are you ready, Lloyd?
Yeah, yeah. No. So catharsis,
Okay.
pedophilia was not the norm. For instance, the Canaanites were killed because they were practicing such things. That's why God demanded that the Jews wipe them out because they were an evil race that were doing child sacrifice and incest and other crimes. Right. So this was not a common practice that was accepted. Muslims do make that excuse, but this is actually, to my knowledge, this is not the truth. And so, yes, however, also if Muhammad did so, it is now lawful and moral and right for all time. No Muslim can countermand anything, can criticize anything Muhammad has said or done. So therefore, whether if, for argument's sake, if Rebecca were 3 years old, this is not an example for Christians. She is not an example for Christians. Her husband's not the example for Christians. Anything Muhammad did
Yeah.
is the example for all time, for all mankind. Therefore, you'd actually be sinning if you did not practice what we today term pedophilia. Now, discussing why Muhammad died. Okay, let's have
Uh,
a look. Yeah.
Sorry, just before you go on, Just wanted to remind our audience that the reason why we're talking about this is because Caleb actually raised these points. We're simply expanding on them as we're going along to show that why Caleb actually thinks that no one should actually be a Muslim. Not you, not me, not even the Muslims. So
Yeah.
yeah, this is one of
So
one
Caleb
primary
raised this
point that
now.
yeah.
So
Go
let's have a
ahead.
look into this here. So let's go to the life of Muhammad, a translation of Ibn Ishaq, right? So which is Ibn Isaac, page 166 in Sirat Rasulullah, the life of Muhammad. Then Gabriel came to Muhammad and said, "What have you done, Muhammad? You have read to these people something I did not bring you from Allah, and you have said what Allah did not say to you." The apostle was bitterly grieved and was greatly in fear of Allah. Now, Moses, the law of Moses is what they claim Jesus came to fulfill, or rather to perpetuate. Right? They claim that Jesus came to perpetuate the law of Moses. And of course, under the law of Moses in Leviticus, a false prophet who speaks words not from God has to be put to death. So in this case, here Muhammad would then legitimately be killed. Now, of course, they will lie and they will find any and every excuse under the sun. Now, when the annulment of what Satan had put upon the prophet's tongue, so now they admit that Muhammad had spoken words from Satan. He was unable to tell the difference between the voice of Allah, of God, and the voice of Satan. This means that his status as a prophet is very, very questionable. His mental
Mm.
state and his knowledge is very, very questionable. Now, these two words which Satan had put upon, and they're trying to water this down, these two words was not two words, which Satan had put upon the apostles' tongue were in the mouth of every polytheist. So he had spread a message. Okay, now moving on. Okay, so just a
Uh,
diversion. There's a question about Simon wanting from the Kia Watch, wanting me to pair up with Simon. I had dealings with Simon in the past. I chose to voluntarily walk away from that association because there were certain ideas that he held which I did not agree with. I found that these ideas were not ones that I could support and ones that I knew to be false. So I voluntarily walked away from that association. So no, I will not be teaming up with Simon. Okay, now moving on. Now, here we have the History of Al-Tabri, Volume 6, Muhammad at Mecca. Satan casts a false revelation on the messenger of Allah's tongue. That evening, Gabriel came to Muhammad and reviewed the surah with him. So there are no two-word surahs. And when he reached the two phrases which Satan had cast upon his tongue, so it's phrases now, not words anymore, I did not bring you these two. Then the messenger of Allah said, I have fabricated things against Allah, and I have imputed to him words which he has not spoken. So Muhammad here admits that there's an issue, that he has been deceived by Satan, which is why we have the controversy of the yeah, when there's this issue now when Muhammad admits that he's been deceived by Satan, and of course this
yeah.
means that under the Mosaic law he needs to be killed, right? So now this again, of course, the excuse they make within the Quran in 22:52 is never sent we a messenger or a prophet before thee, but when he recited the message, Satan put words in his mouth. Now there is no evidence of this happening to any other prophet. We don't have this, but here they make this claim. Okay, Allah abolishes that which Satan throws in. Okay, so they do admit that Muhammad was deceived. Now, of course, Muslims will lie and deny, and this is what they do. So then we get to the situation where his aorta is cut, and let's move on. Yes, that reference about the Talmud is correct. That's in the chat.
So I
So,
wanted to ask you on this issue, do we know what those two things were that he actually lied about?
no, he had said something. I think was about the Alat, Manat, and Al Uzza. So this was about the foreign gods that he associated other gods with. Well, I think the situation was if for 1 year they would worship Allah, for 1 year he would worship their gods, and so he obviously then you know committed blasphemy so against Allah. So um, if I recall, that's the situation there. But let's have a look at Muhammad's death from the notes here. So, in Quran 69:44 to 46, and if he, Muhammad, had forged a false saying concerning us, surely we would have seized him by his right hand, and then we would have cut his life artery, his aorta, Hilali Khan. If he had invented a false saying concerning us, we would have taken him and severed his life artery. And here in Dawood, heart's vein, and in Shakir, aorta. Now the Muslim commentaries, let's look at Tafsir Ibn Abbas, and then severed his life artery, the life artery of Muhammad. So if he had invented false sayings, and of course we have proof from the Islamic sources that Muhammad had invented false sayings from Allah, right? Tafsir Jalalain, we would have assuredly severed his life artery, the aorta of the heart. In Ibn Kathir, they would have considered, Ibn Abbas said, it awatan refers to the artery of the heart, and we would have cut off his artery, his aorta. Tustari, we would have severed his life artery, the wartan, this being the aorta, which is the main artery to which the heart is attached. Ibn Kathir, right? The Jews would still try to kill the Prophet in the future using poison and magic. And during the illness that preceded his death, the Prophet said, I kept feeling the after effect of what I ate from that poisoned sheep. And when it is the time that the aorta will be cut off, and in Kushairi, the Prophet was slain, he was killed, right? So he says the Prophet was killed. The meal of Khaybar comes to me yet again, but this time it has cut my aorta. And Muhammad comes out leaning on two men while his feet are dragging on the ground. And Aisha says, I never saw anyone suffer more pain than the Messenger of Allah. And of course, Muhammad then says, May Allah curse the Jews and the Christians, as two of his final words before he left the earth. And then, of course, he says, I feel as if my aorta is being cut from that poison. And of course, we have this poisoned sheep, the poison roasted sheep. And of course, we have, I continued to feel the pain from the morsel which I'd eaten at Khaybar. This is the time when it has cut off my aorta. These are the words of Muhammad. So Allah says that if Muhammad speaks falsehood from him, he will cut his aorta. And Muhammad goes on to confirm, this is the time when it cut my aorta. So Muhammad multiple times, at this very moment, I feel my aorta being severed. I didn't write this. These are the Islamic commentators, and these are apparently the words of Muhammad that we should believe. Your thoughts, then?
Yeah. No, I'm actually like recently the amount of tafsirs you've provided is overwhelming. Um, I was actually recently contacted by a Muslim friend, and he said to me, do you, when you guys discuss or whatever the case is, do you look into the tafsirs? And I hope that if he is watching, he is convinced that we are looking into the tafsirs. And I just want to encourage all the Muslims to watch the videos before they, you know,
Yeah,
ask the very questions that we actually
yeah.
deal within the videos.
It should be
Okay,
noted
so
that
yeah, definitely.
that they used the Mohsin Khan translation during the debate, and Mohsin Khan was medically trained. He has a degree in medicine and in surgery. He's actually a surgeon. So when he translated the aorta, he knew exactly what he was talking about. He'd worked for the Saudi Ministry of Health as a surgeon. And then we have the refutations. So should I go through some of these supposed refutations that Asrar provides?
For what?
So to start with some of the refutations or the arguments or the
Oh yeah.
replies that were
So
given.
I just wanted to conclude. So
Sure.
Caleb does a very good job in just providing a good insight, and we've actually provided also just a brief, expansion on why Muhammad is a morally corrupt man and not worthy to be followed, as Surah 33 verse 21 suggests. So now, anyways, let's get into Sheikh Asrar from 31 minutes and 35 seconds, where he actually starts his um, first refutation. Would you like me to start, or did you want to randomly just pick?
I'll just grab a few because I have them in order as they came up.
Okay, sure,
Um,
sure. That's fine. Go for it.
so now I will note, I say here that Asrar shouted the following assertions while providing no arguments for being Muslim. The point is that he was supposed to discuss why being Muslim, and of course he didn't provide much by way of evidence for being Muslim. Now, one of the
No, he
first
did.
things he said, yeah,
Can you play that video? It would be fun for the audience to perhaps
31
even
minutes
watch
and
as we.
35 seconds.
Yeah, that's
Um,
that's where he starts.
okay, so I would actually need to go to the, okay, give me 1 second
YouTube.
to bring that up.
Okay.
Um, sorry, I'm going to have to take a minute to bring that up. I didn't think to,
That's cool. Is everyone enjoying the show though?
So 31 minutes, 35 seconds, right? So
There
let's
we
do
go.
that.
31, 35.
And how long should I play it for?
Just a few seconds, literally, few seconds. Or 10 minutes
Okay,
into
so
this.
guys, are you
So, yeah.
hearing this? Let me know if you hear this. Ah, I
Yep,
need to
hearing
enable
you
the audio.
nice, clear.
So let me enable the audio. Okay, yeah, so that is not going to function. So let me get rid of that. Let me add it. Oh man, I cannot add the audio. Oh, good grief. My audio, it's the drivers. The audio is not going to work. So I would need to, no, I can't
Okay,
add
no,
it now.
if it's big issue, then we can just continue. But if you can,
I know
it'll
I've
be
just got it.
nice.
I've got it listed down, so we don't necessarily have to play it. I can just mention these are some of the common arguments that you'll hear. So I just thought I can discuss it from this. Now,
Okay.
sorry about that, guys. My issue, my fault on the technical issue there. So Sheikh Asrar says that now Caleb and Hatun. Well, Caleb mentioned the Hadith. He did not discuss the Quran. Now, understand that
Yes.
the Bible stands alone, right? And of course, this is where Sheikh Asrar was trying very hard to deceive. The Bible stands alone. The Quran does not stand alone. A Muslim who strictly follows the Bible is an apostate. He is on the fringes of Islam. He stands outside of Islam, right? He is not a Muslim. He's not considered a Muslim. He's an apostate, right? And so he
So
is obviously
what does that mean though? What does that mean though?
because there are roughly 100 commands within the Quran, be it direct or indirect statements that Muslims are to follow the words of Allah and the words of Muhammad. The words of Muhammad are not in the Quran. The words of Muhammad are in the Sirah and in the Hadith, right, within the Sunnah. So therefore,
Yeah.
you cannot follow Muhammad if you only have the Quran. So therefore, you are not following Islam. And of course, these are Sunni Muslims, which Sunni comes from Sunnah, the people of the Sunnah. If you're a Sunni and you don't know the Sunnah, don't follow the Sunnah, then what kind of Sunni are you? If you're a Christian who doesn't follow Christ, who doesn't read the New Testament, what kind of Christian are you? Understand? If you reject the New Testament,
Yeah.
so understand that would not. So he says that the Hadith are extra religious literature. He said this would be the equivalent of me not reading the Bible, but reading commentaries in other books. Well, the Bible stands alone. Those other books are irrelevant. They are extra religious. You don't need other books to complement the Bible, right? The Bible
Yeah.
is the prime and only source. Whereas in Islam, you cannot do without the Quran, technically speaking. You have to have the Hadith, you have to have the Sirah, you must have the Sharia. There is no choice. So, unfortunately, his argument here is a complete lie. He calls the Hadith extra religious. So, if he rejects the Hadith, he's not a Muslim. That is apostasy. So, he is lying right out through his teeth here, right? So this is completely a false representation of what this is. So it's like him not, he lies when he says it's like him not quoting the Bible. Okay, so the Bible stands alone, the Quran does not. He lies again and he says that Sahih, so he says that you quoted Sahih Bukhari, then he disses Sahih Bukhari and he says that no, you can't use Sahih Bukhari as a reliable source because he says Sahih means that the book itself in general is sound, but solitary hadith are not. This is known as a lie. He is lying simply because if you go into the Fath al Bari and you mentioned that earlier, if you go into the Fath al Bari will tell you very bluntly, and that's the major by Asqalani, that is the major commentary on the Hadith. You will see that you are told that the Sahih Bukhari is the collection of the authenticated Hadith. Each Hadith individually is authenticated. You can't say, well, this
Yeah.
book is all good except some of the stuff in the book is not good, then like all of these jelly beans in this jar are poison free because the jar itself is poison free, but some of the jelly beans have poison in them. I'm sorry, but that's nonsense. Nonsense.
Yeah.
So
Sheikh Asrar
yeah,
even begins with, the fact that him saying that uh, he begins his argument with attempting to refute Caleb in the fact that Caleb did not quote Quran. Instead, he ran to the Hadith. And the fact that you're saying that the Hadith is somewhat equally important to the Muslim as the Quran. However, is it true that Caleb did not quote the Quran? He may not have quoted the Quran, but he does definitely bring out the teachings that the
Hmm.
Quran actually,
Well,
provides. The whole Trinity issue, right? That's from within the Quran. So I'm not sure why Sheikh Asrar is attempting to, kind of
no,
straw
he
man the issue.
misrepresents Islam, and unfortunately, you mentioned earlier, I have a real problem with Muslim theologians, Muslim academics, Muslim apologists, Muslim polemicists, sorry, on the Christian side of things, who do not know and do not understand the Sirah and do not understand the Sharia, especially the Sharia, because Muslims will run in circles and they will lie in circles whole day, back and forth, because the Quran has contradictory statements and they can use whichever one is appropriate under a given circumstance. If you say it's blue, they'll find the verse that says it's pink. If you say it's pink, they'll find the verse that says it's blue. It's that simple. All right. It's that if you say it's male, they'll show you the verse that says it's female. If you show the verse that says it's female, they'll show the verse that says it's male. Of course, these are abrogated. Only one of them is ultimately correct, but they will lie and constantly go in circles. You go to the Sharia, that is it. That is the final answer. There is no additional answer. So yeah, the question is, so yes, now first of all, Sunni Muslims pray 5 times a day. Is that in the Quran? No. There are 3 prayers in the Quran. There are 5 in the Hadith. The Hadith abrogate the Quran. So yes, and the Hadith explain the Quran. The Hadith add to the Quran, and it is obligatory. It is obligatory for Muslims to believe the Hadith. It is obligatory for Muslims to follow the Hadith. That's why they
Yeah.
call people of the Sunnis, because the people of the Sunnah. What's the Sunnah? The Hadith. Well, there you go.
Yeah,
So
so
he's, yep.
Caleb did not necessarily quote the Quran. He just used the Hadith, which is as equally important to the Muslim community as the Quran. So that is something that people need to understand. Anyway, so his
So he
response,
claims
the
that
very
if
beginning of the response, is kind of
so,
pointless. Anyways.
Asrar goes on to claim that Bukhari is open to criticism. This is absolute nonsense. That's why it's called Sahih. So he claims that
Oh yes,
suddenly
yes,
this is all
yes.
open to criticism.
and
Now,
and he and he
yeah.
talks about that in response to the issue of Aisha. Do you want to go? I actually have a whole systematic presentation of how he actually talks about it. Did you
Okay,
want
well,
me
let me
to?
just finish this. This is a couple of
Okay.
points here. So then he then claims that now Sahih Bukhari is not open to criticism. Maybe the scholars, so you see, the scholars can discuss these things. However,
Yeah.
the scholars have settled on the ijma, which is not open to discussion even to the scholars. So they may debate on certain points that are not relevant to the ultimate underlying doctrine of Islam, but they can discuss other issues that don't affect their main beliefs. But also, he claims that if the Hadith contradicts the Quran, we abandon the Hadith. He says this, right? However, we know that the Hadith abrogate the Quran. So why are they praying 5 times a day?
Hmm.
It's as simple as that. Why are they praying 5 times a day? Because no, they do not abandon. We also know that the Hadith abrogate the Quran, and there are certain areas where simply, for instance, how do you pray? That's not in the Hadith either. It's not in the Quran. How do you pray? The process, when Muslims go to mosque, they learn how, they go through a detailed process of learning how to pray. Is that in the Quran? No, it's absolutely not. It's not found there. That's in the Sharia. So now we can go even to another source that supersedes the Quran.
Huh. That's very interesting. And I did not know that.
Hmm. Yep. So anyway, back to you then.
Very, very interesting. That's very intriguing. Okay, so going back to Sheikh Asrar, he talks about the fact that Aisha. Firstly, he says that the Quran says that child marriage is prohibited. Do you know of any verse that actually says that?
No, no, absolutely not. There is no such verse. He made the claim, provided no evidence, and of course he failed to discuss 65:4 when they do go, which is the divorce of girls who are not yet with periods. He claims that this is about women who have medical issues where they don't have periods.
Okay, well, okay. Okay, and then one of the things that he says is that Aisha was 16, not 6. The reason why he says that people in the past they claimed of themselves 6 because it was like from the age of maturity, then they would start counting in numbers.
Um,
What's your
so he
perspective on
claimed
that? I
there's a
thought that was
tradition amongst
funny.
the Arabs. So he claims that there's a tradition amongst the Arabs that if someone
Yes,
was 7 or 17, they would say, that they're
7.
7.
Yes, yes.
And he says that they know that, for instance, 7-year-olds are not allowed to join the men. So if this person had been with the men, then they had to be 17 and couldn't be 7. So this is entirely, again, without support. I mean, he makes these claims. So in other words, he says that, so Aisha was not the age that we claim, that she was 16 and not 6, right? And he claims that 9 is the age of consent for marriage until a woman reaches puberty. And in Islam, puberty is 15, right? The official age for puberty in Islam, in Sunni jurisprudence, is 15. So this, of course, is another false claim that he makes. Remember, he did not back up any of his claims. He provided very little reference. So he says no. And besides, until the age of puberty, the father can decide, girly girl, you're getting married today. There's your husband. Say hello, right? It's that simple.
Yeah.
It's quite bluntly that simple. He can make you get married. If you don't like it, you know where the whip is, right? So it's that simple. Yeah.
Yep. Now, a quick response to his argument. Bukhari 6130 talks about the fact that that children, girls that were allowed to play with dolls, were under prepubescent, right? They were prepubescent girls because a girl that has passed prepubescent would not be allowed to be played, not would not be allowed to play with dolls and stuff.
Right.
Now, Sahih Muslim, book 008, number hadith number 3311, says that when Muhammad called Aisha to consummate the marriage, she was playing with dolls.
Right.
And one interesting, Ibn Hajar al Asqalani makes a commentary on this, adds a commentary in Fath al Bari, and he says that Aisha was pre-pubescent on this hadith, that she was pre-pubescent when she was taken in to be consummated with Muhammad. Now, this is really something that everyone should know, is that they will run around, denying the fact that Aisha was prepubescent. However, then they are denying their scholars that lived far closer to the life of Muhammad and all of that, all the events that has taken place.
Yeah,
Another thing,
let
yeah,
me
go
bring
ahead.
up a reference to that so the audience can see this. So, for instance, in Bukhari, Volume 8, Book 73, number 151, now we've just been told by a sheikh that Bukhari is not reliable and is open to question. Okay, fine, thanks. I used to play with dolls. Now, it's not legal for a young girl who is over the age of puberty in Islam to play with dolls. She's a woman now. Dolls are not allowed. Right, so the Prophet would call them to join and play with me. So the first reference is dolls. But playing with dolls and similar images is forbidden, but it was allowed for Aisha at the time as she was a little girl, not yet reached the age of puberty.
Puberty. That definitely is a very significant proclamation right there. Very, very significant. And I think that everyone in the audience should take serious note of that claim, is that Aisha was not she had not reached puberty. And
Now,
on, yeah, good.
yeah, a different issue on this is that, of course, he cannot go and start denying his own Sirah, he can deny the Quran, he can deny the Hadith, and etc., etc. However, you go into the Sharia, you go into the marriage laws, and I've covered this in depth recently.
Yeah,
There are
yeah.
dozens of rulings that explicitly allow marriage, divorce, and diddling of infants, of minors, of
Yeah,
prepubescent girls
yeah,
and
yes,
boys.
not only prepubescent, the language in the Sharia is infant, that men, grown men, can have sexual intercourse with infants. And that definitely is a very significant
Yeah. Now, my
response to.
concern is, and
Yeah.
I have an issue with the fact that someone like Hatun and other Islamic Christian apologists are ignorant of the Sharia, and they keep going in circles and circles on that same old Hadith Quran treadmill and round and round. And this is my frustration. If they went to the Sharia and said, look, let's talk about your law, there are no other laws. This is the final word, and that would be it. Done.
Yeah. Okay. Another last argument against the fact that we know that Sheikh Asrar at this stage is either lying or is simply needs to do a little bit more research into his own Islamic history. Um, I would hope so that he's not lying, because at this stage, if he is lying, then not great, not great at all.
Yeah. Well, he
Uh,
goes on to say, for instance, yeah, go on.
so Al-Tabri, Volume 9, page 1 to 8, clearly identifies Aisha as a girl who was not ready for consummation when she was married to Muhammad. Al-Tabri, Volume 9, page 128. Once again, she was pre-pubescent. So I'm not sure where Shaykh Asrar is getting his stuff.
So
Definitely
if it's
all the
not allowed
classical
by the
scholars
Quran, then
disagree.
how is it all over the Sharia? How is it all legal in Islamic law for eternity? So
Man,
someone's
you
lying,
know,
someone's wrong here.
yeah, and that's the thing, is that at this stage, just looking at the overwhelming evidence that we have against the fact that Aisha was undoubtedly 6 years of age and nine, when and prepubescent nine, not mature nine as they claim she was, prepubescent nine, when she was taken in for consummation of marriage. I'm not sure at this stage how to respond to him, because it's either the guy's lying
It's
to
very simple.
protect, as
He's
you,
lying,
yeah,
and if
or
those
he's
if
just
those Christian
unaware.
apologists understood the Sharia, they would simply say, "I'm sorry, but why is this all over your Sharia law? Show me the Sharia laws forbidding this, and then we can bring up all the laws that allow the divorce, allow that discuss this, which I have done on this channel." Uh, Belina says there are Sharia rulings regarding penalizing or not a suckling baby dies or survives from the rupturing of girls' bits due to intercourse. Oh my gosh, that's horrible. Yeah,
Yeah,
but
that
maybe
stuff is
so,
just
so that's it.
gruesome.
If they just went to the Sharia, that would solve all of these problems. And unfortunately, Christian apologists are good little dummies, and they fail to discuss the Sharia and don't bring it up with Muslims because good little dummies. I
Okay.
mean,
The next one was, he talks about the fact that in 34 minutes 23 seconds, he says that this issue of Aisha, Christians only began attacking this issue from the 20th century. Your response?
That's because only in the 19th century, in the mid 1800s, was when these sources started to be translated. They were translated by British scholars and by German scholars. So they were translated into German and into English in the late 1800s. So they only became known in the 20th century. So the late 19th and early 20th centuries, when these sources were translated and known, that's why this was being brought up then. And it was much of this is forgotten. Lots of scholarship's been done during that period, the 1800s, that is totally forgotten. I have some of the books, I've read some of them, and scholars today are reinventing the wheel instead of going to the scholarship done by the Germans and the Brits 150 years ago.
Well, yes, thank you for that. But additionally, my response is, because the reason why we would talk about the Aisha issue is, I think that the Muslim needs to know this, is that whatever Muhammad did implicates what Muslims do today. And
Correct.
that's a significant, a significant reason why we should be talking about this. Is child marriage a good thing today, or is it an absolute lunacy for
Yeah.
anyone to practice such a
Yeah,
thing?
I'd rather
It
move on to the
definitely.
next argument, to the next point now, because I mean, I think we've covered this at some length prior as well. And
Yeah, did you want to talk about the Catholic Encyclopedia, or do you want to just jump out of this Aisha issue?
just he actually then brings up the Amalekites. That was something that was of interest. He brings up the Amalekites argument. I wanted to focus on
Yeah,
the
yeah.
common arguments that we've all heard before and just discuss some of those because these are common issues that Muslims raise. They just repeat the same old stupid arguments. So he then brings up the issue of the Amalekites, right? Claiming it's that this is Jesus speaking in the Old Testament, and thus it is Christian. Now, of course, the Old Testament is not considered Christian, right? It's called the Old Testament for a reason, right?
Yeah.
And of course, that was a different series of laws that were in place at the time. That was a completely different covenant. Now, he tries to make light of this and just skirt past that issue. Now, the Amalekites were, of course, enemies of the Jews. The Amalekites were considered evil. The Amalekites had been given an amount of time to mend their ways. And at a certain point, God says, look, these people are evil. We need to deal with them. And he gives authority to the Jews to go and kill them. Now, of course, we know that, and he claims, and he, by implication or directly, he tries to state that this is Jesus instructing violence, as if this is now an instruction by Jesus for violence on any and everyone. And obviously, we know this is not the case. This was a very specific situation given very specific circumstances. Now, of course, we do know that, for instance, the doctrine of jihad is open ended warfare against all non Muslims for all time to force them to either adopt Islam or to pay extortion money, right? Or into slavery. So that's very simple. He fails to bring up this, and I just felt that the Christian apologists again were bringing up the same responses to this. But again, if we went to the Sharia and said, hold on, here is jihad from multiple Sharia manuals. This is the definition. It is to make war on non-Muslims, Christians and Jews, to force them to become Muslim or to extort money from them while they become slaves. So this Amalekites argument is very weak. And this is not Jesus speaking in terms of Christianity, because there's no such discussion in Christianity. They have to distort to try to defend Islam because they don't have much of a position.
Hmm. Yeah, shocking stuff, man. Okay. I think we have hit our time marker. I wanted to quickly to touch on Sheikh Asrar. I think at 35 minutes, 34 seconds, he brings up and he tries to redefine the Trinity. Did you want to quickly go there? I've got a few pointers over there.
Yeah, go ahead. That's fine.
Okay. He says that he attempts to correct Caleb, and he says that the what Caleb is trying to say is that the term the oneness of God is considered entity of God and the qualities or the attributes of God. Um, let me just quickly do something here. I've got my bookshelf right behind me, and I'm going to pull out this. Sorry, my mic fell off. Okay. I want to show people these books. Okay, this is from Stephen Sharnock, The Existence and the Attributes of God. Please read the definition of the being of God and the personhood of God. This is Herman Bavinck, Reformed Dogmatics, Volume 2, God and Creation. And lastly, but not the least, definitely, is John Calvin, Institutes of the Christian Religion. And one of the things that you will quickly notice is that a nowhere nowhere in the historic development of this whole issue between the language that is used for God does anyone ever actually says the entity of God or the quality of God. The attributes are understood as the attributes that are found within God, but when we speak of the Trinity, we nowhere does anyone talk about it in the sense of qualities or attributes.
Yeah.
Calvin talks about it essence and being. Herman Bavinck talks about substance and being. Saint Athanasius talks about its substance and being. Saint Basil talks about essence and being. Tertullian talks about being and
Yeah.
essence.
So he was
Augustine talks
simply
about
trying to
substance and being.
redefine. I mean, he was
Yeah.
trying to redefine the belief. Oh, by the way, I have this on screen because this came up in the discussion. Women in
Okay.
Islam, the rule printed in the Pakistani Sharia manual. This is the second most popular Sharia manual used in Islamic courts. And this is popular in that region of the world. And of course, you guys can read this for yourselves. I just left this up here. So yes, this is Sharia law. Now, if Hatun Tash had pulled this up and said, when it came to childhood marriage, do you care to explain this and the other couple of dozen laws I will show you? That might have been a slightly different debate. What do you think, Shimon?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Bringing up such stuff, I don't think any Muslim, at least I have not come across people being able to respond to this specific thing. I've actually sent this personally to people as well. Yeah,
It's
this is pretty brutal.
yeah, yeah. No, it's yeah. No, so they do try to redefine things. They do try to redefine it on their own terms, and then I mean they create a straw man and they take down the straw man. So they do misrepresent, and this is very, very common in what they do. So yeah, so they provide a false presentation on Islam, and they provide a false misrepresentation of Christianity.
You,
There's a
you
couple
know,
of
yeah, good. Sorry.
no, go ahead. No, you go. Go ahead. Fine.
Um, I think that just kind of we're in the last kick of the show here for our first show on this debate review. I wanted to say something, and that is this: I hope that our audience can see honestly the fact that Sheikh Asrar has not only misrepresented Christian thought, but he has misrepresented his own Islamic thought and history. Why he has done that, you be the judge. But I hope that we have been able to show you that he has most definitely done that. That's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, I just want to say that he is using basic polemics that Muslims do, and also he's dodging and ducking and diving the way that Muslim apologists typically do. And he's relying on our ignorance. Now, the one way to get around all of these arguments is to present the Sharia. That's the brick wall. That's the hard stop at the end. Right. If Caleb and Hatun had brought up the Sharia, that would have ended the conversation. That would have been the final point and done. Right. So understand, I'm just going to bring up this last point. I've done this before. This is in the Sharia. This is the discussion on Christianity from the Sharia. It's called the finality of the Prophet's message, section W4.0, continued from section A1.5. And this is to clarify possible confusions among Muslims as to Islam's place among world religions. It centers on 3 points. Muhammad is the last prophet. Anyone claiming to be a prophet or messenger of Allah after Muhammad to found a new religion is a fraud, misled, and misleading. They state, previously revealed religions were valid in their own eras, as attested to by the Quran, but were abrogated by the message of Islam, as is equally attested to by verses of the Quran. Now, both are worthy of attention from English-speaking Muslims who are occasionally exposed to erroneous theories advanced by some people, affirming Christianity's validity but denying or not mentioning their abrogation. It is unbelief to hold that the remnant cults, now bearing the names of formerly valid religions such as Christianity or Judaism, are acceptable to Allah after He sent Muhammad. This is a matter over which there is no disagreement among Islamic scholars, and they state here that Muhammad was sent to the entire world. Islam must be adopted by the entire world. Okay? If an English-speaking Muslim has any questions, the only reason can be that no one has yet offered them a translation of a scholarly Quranic exegesis, a tafsir, to explain the accord between the various Quranic verses and their agreement with the Sunnah. So here
Mm.
they affirm the Sunnah, and of course Asrar denies the Sunnah. Islam is the final religion that Allah the Most High will never lessen or abrogate until the last day. Just thought I would throw that in so you understand what Islam states. So there is no bridge building, there is no discussion. We are abrogated, we are done. Christianity is a remnant cult, a remnant cult. Your thoughts on this, Shaman, before we end off rather.
This is, yeah, after reading this, just looking at it's actually disappointing that that Sheikh Asrar has taken a, his attitude in this debate was very uncalled for, in the sense that I'm not sure if he has his own Islam that he follows at this stage. At least his profile says that he's a Sunni Hanafi. He's from the Hanafi school of thought. But man,
The
honestly, let
Hanafiya
me
are the
be honest.
largest
Let me
school
be
of
open and honest
jurisprudence.
here. Can
Yeah,
I just be myself for a moment,
sure.
right? I don't feel like we should actually continue with reviewing this debate anymore. You know why?
Sure.
You know why? Because all I see is um, silly, cheap shots against Christianity with no substance behind the argument. And number two, blatant lies in attempt to present a fabricated
Yeah,
historicity of Islam. That's what I see.
agreed.
And
Now, again,
it's it's just like it just feels like a meaningless kind of thing because the arguments against Christianity, honestly, my 13-year-old daughter I actually showed her that. Hey, have you ever heard anyone say entity and quality? She was
No,
like, she
no,
calls me up, John, and she was like, no, that's weird. My 13-year-old
exactly.
daughter. So
Exactly.
I'm not
So
not
this
sure.
is, I mean, that's just sleight of mouth. That's all he's doing. Now, again, I
Yeah.
want to reiterate to the audience, permissible lying. This is in the Sharia. This is Islamic law. There is lying is permitted. In fact, there is obligatory lying. To defend Islam, it is obligatory that Muslims lie,
And I like the
right?
fact that, Lloyd has zoomed into that for everyone to see that properly, guys.
Right.
So really enjoy that and take advantage of zooming in.
Yeah, so okay, Nicholas Paulson says, would you mind commenting on Imam Tawhidi and his book Tragedy of Islam, his reform attempts to reform Islam, and is he honest to spreading FUD? You know, I don't know what to think about him. I like a lot of the things he says. I have listened to him speak about Islam, and sometimes the guy is just talking out of his butt. Um, Sometimes, look, honestly, on a scale from 1 to 10, I think that when he speaks about Islam, he's lying. Um, do I think he means well? Do I think he has a good heart? Do I think he has good intentions? Yes. Do I think that his reform efforts can work? No, because that means actually rejecting Islam. He tells the story that Aisha is 18. He tells the story that the reason that they made her age 6 was because she was promiscuous. She was cheating on Muhammad with every guy around. And to save
Huh.
Muhammad embarrassment, they changed their age to 6. I'm like, how does that make it better? Because
That
now
doesn't.
it made child sex permissible for eternity. So in the final analysis, I have to go with Coffee Bean here, and I don't trust him. Whether he means well and he's being an idiot, or whether he's just a good liar, either way, he's not taking a good approach here. And yes, he has a good message. Yes, he seems to form good allies, and he has, if he was the face of Islam and he was legit, but unfortunately, his message goes completely against Orthodox Islamic teachings, and I would have to, on balance, I would have to state, look, maybe he's not lying, maybe he's legit, but he's wrong, and it's not going to go anywhere. And I would not, I cannot trust this at all. I'm just going to finish up the section on lying. Hopefully that answers. So permissible, the section on permissible lying. Anyone who settles disagreements between people to bring about good, right, or says something commendable is not a liar. So if you lie by saying something nice about Islam, you are not a liar, right? And so this is very much the size of it in Islam. You can lie if you are saying something commendable or trying to keep the peace, right? And of course, Muhammad didn't lie except for three things: settling disagreements, war, and a man talking with his wife. This is permitted. So Muhammad basically, since Muslims are at a permanent war with us in the Dar al-Harb, therefore lying is always permitted. This is an explicit statement that lying is permissible for a given interest, right? It is lawful to lie. The best analysis is that when it
Yeah,
is
settled
possible to
this.
achieve the aim, and this is basically the supremacy of Islam over people who are trying to prevent you from spreading Islam, when it is possible to achieve such an aim by lying, but not by telling the truth, it is permissible to lie if the goal is permissible. When the purpose of lying is to circumvent someone who is preventing one from doing something permissible, and obligatory to lie if the goal is obligatory. It is not unlawful to lie when any of these can only be attained through lying. When you can only win by lying, it is obligatory to lie. It is religiously more precautionary to employ words that give a misleading impression. Qualities, misleading impression. The outward purport of the words deceives the hearer. So here, Islam is teaching deceit. It is actively teaching deceit. I'll leave it at that, guys. I'll end up here. Hopefully that. So yeah, that's just some of the polemics that this guy was raising, and it it's just I'm shocked that a top scholar of Islam, an actual sheikh, is willing to lie this much. Does he commit shirk? No, because as long as he in his heart he believes, but outwardly he's just talking whatever he says, then it's okay because it's only lying on the outside, not lying on the inside.
So I don't know if you want to leave this, Lloyd, to There's other interesting things also that I've actually been exposed to with you. I'm not sure if
Right.
you want to leave this to the audience, if the audience wants us to
Yeah.
continue
I
providing a
might pick up
review.
some of this later anyway, discuss it myself because on Friday I'm doing another show with Stephen Gilchrist, so I can cover some of this anyway because we're talking about Islamic polemics. So I'll probably do some of that anyway. So
Okay.
we can discuss a different topic for next time.
Okay. Um, okay, guys. I think we have come to the end of our show.
Yeah.
Um, if anyone has learned, I want to say this one thing that at least in my encounter, just kind of really digging into Islam, Sharia, etc., is that my faith, being an ex-Muslim coming to Christianity, has been further strengthened. Studying Islam has strengthened my faith in Christ. How about that? Definitely. How about that?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, just wanted to say that. And yeah, very disappointing debate. Very, very disappointing debate. Not disappointing because of anything else, but because Sheikh Asrar was entirely disappointing. Uh, as a scholar, I would expect a lot more, but I guess that's just what it is. Okay. Yeah, um, we're done. And
Yeah.
please share this video, subscribe to our channels, and press the like button, comment, and go wild with it.
Yeah, guys, I hope that was helpful. That taught you something. And yeah, just lying. I'll cover the rest of the topics that I have discussed here. I'll probably go through those. I'll discuss these with Stephen this week. But yeah, let's us discuss another topic for next week, Shamoon. But this is very just interesting. I was just shocked at how much this. But he was playing on our ignorance. And guys, if you know the Sharia, study my videos, then they can't lie to you anymore, and their backs will be against the wall. There's nowhere else for them to go. The Sharia is the final ruling, the final ruling. There is no other. So yeah, I'll leave it at that, guys. Thank you. Yeah,
A last comment is that I have actually started a specific Christian, series from the Institute of the Christian Religion. I provide like a 10-minute discussion on what the Christian religion is and stuff. So if anyone's interested in learning systematic theology, simplified, really simplified, please do watch that, share that, like that, and yeah, enjoy.
and
Okay,
thank you very
guys.
much, and thank you for the donation. Yeah, you know who you are. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. I'm very grateful. And yes, guys, please sign up. Shamoon's link is in the description. And thank you for being part of the discussion. Thanks for the questions. I hope my answers were helpful. And I will be tackling this again. I'll talk about some of these questions separately, probably this Friday. And yeah, we'll see you guys next week. No, thank you, Nicholas. Much appreciated. But yeah, no, thank you. Really do appreciate the support. Thanks, guys. Till next time, take care. Good night.
Bye bye.